Here we are. Welcome to Nature's Neighbor. Happy Monday to each and every one of you. I got a fun studio today because we are going to be talking to John Tucker. John Tucker has started a group, but I just, I kind of had a little talk before the show starts here, and I said, I'm just sending everyone to him now. Everybody that's been texting me, calling me, emailing me, asking me about groundwater or water, you lose my number, find his number. I'm just saying it right there. But I am joined with, of course, my co-host, Josh from Carmichael Environmental. And here we are on the last Monday of August. We finally had a little bit of summer heat, but it's already cooling down. I have to say it's been a beautiful summer, and although I'm super grateful and appreciative, I've gotten a lot of things done. I've also kind of realized that in the talks of community and resilience and building infrastructure or becoming, more resourceful within our system, the cooler weather has made us a little bit lackadaisy. It's not it's 100 degrees, climate change. We're heating up. We got to do this with our water. We got to do this. It's definitely made us a lot less,
or more comfortable.
Comfortable. Yes, it's become this system of it's not that hot, no big deal. And then there's the realization that there's a lot of new people in this community because they don't realize that this is not normal. We should be having 98 to 110. Yes, Josh.
Yeah, triple digits for sure.
You coming over the grade and bringing all that fog with you. All the cooler weather. My South County resident neighbors and on the coast. I always beg for you to drive fast and maybe funnel the fog normally this time of the year. And
yeah, we're getting to fall.
I haven't needed you that bad because it's been cool.
Yeah, we're getting to fall, so the weather's really kind of evening out everywhere. Mm-hmm. We do have a little bit of spikes, so we're burning off that ring layer pretty quick. We have not had too many foggy days. We did have a few this year, but really without the heat, that doesn't suck the fog in. I blame you guys. Yeah. You guys bring the fog off the ocean onto us because you're so hot up here. You need to cool down.
Well, then don't be selfish. Share it. Push it over the hill.
Yeah, right?
So, all right. So we can talk about anything. Josh and I have, the experiences of being the North County girl and being the coastal influence. It's, we have the best of both worlds. And John, I get the impression and the feeling that when I read what you post or what you're doing, the passion and the appreciation of where we live comes through in what you're speaking. Excellent. You're trying to educate. You're trying to get people informed. My very first radio show I put out there, the slogan was engaging the imagination and the conversation of how to move our community forward, doing good things within the system that we have. Mm-hmm. Stop thinking we always have to have something new or something bigger. Why don't we get creative with what we have, right? And so I really see the efforts and the time.
The time.
that you've put in. So, John, introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Share, this whole discussion group that you have.
Sure.
Share all that you've got going on about the Paso Groundwater Basin.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, thanks for the great introduction. For me, it's just about what's right, and I think that's why it's resonated. I haven't lived in North County, but I moved actually to San Luis Obispo County in 2017. Mm-hmm. Moved up to North County in 2018, up to Atascadero, and then 3 years ago moved to Templeton with my wife, and we have a almost 3-year-old daughter. We live in the rural side on the east side of Templeton, and have our own well, a few acres to call our own, and really was completely unaware, obviously coming from entirely out of the area, and then moving into Templeton, of how significant these issues were. Obviously, it's kind of part of the lore of North County, right? Is like water and a few other main topics that kind of always find their way in on a casual conversation. So for me, it was the town hall that the county did back in December of this last year, which
December 14th. December 16th.
16th. It was right before Christmas. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. So actually, we brought our then 2.5-year-old daughter along with us, schlepped her along just because we were out doing Christmas shopping, and figured we'd swing in, and it sounded like it was really important. I have some political connections in the area as well through some other projects I've been involved in. So meet with a couple folks there and kind of figure out what was going on. Mm-hmm. And by the end of that evening, it was the aha moment. It's like, holy smokes, this is going downhill fast.
Yep.
There's a lot of major changes that are coming that I think they're significant enough to where everyone is at risk of major financial damage.
Yeah.
And I don't know that many, at least at the time and even today, that many people really understand the significance of what's happening. So for me, it was all hands on deck, which are these two hands, to really just make the best effort to educate people about what's going on. I do my best. I don't think I always succeed, but to kind of play a middle road on things. I absolutely, provide my opinions and everything, but I love our system of government. I'm a political science graduate, and everything about American democracy and representative democracy are these are things that thrill me. So when I see it, being abused or threatened, then it becomes a passion. This one touches my family personally. So really, from that point forward, was about get as many people as possible aware of exactly where we are with this process. What the important milestones are that are coming, and what they can do, like what are their rights, in this process. That was my main goal. That was it. Is just to educate.
So back in 2008, I sat on ALAB, Agricultural Liaison for the County Board of Supervisors. I was appointed by a supervisor, Frank Meacham at the time, and I'll never forget the meeting that we had. It was February. It was raining outside, and we were having the discussion about the Right to Farm Act. State of California Right to Farm Act. It was formed in the 30s. Farmers had the right on the land, and what was underneath that land, underneath that soil, had the right to the farmer. The discussion started then, and then it became let's create charts. If you grow orchards and vines, you're going to get this X amount of cubic foot of water. If you grow, alfalfa, you got X amount of cubic foot of water. And at that time, I was just a farmer. I was a business owner, but I was a farmer. And I was the only one in that group, though, because we were all farmers or business in agriculture. I was the only one that was on a well, that lived on a well, farmed on a well, that had storage tanks, and I monitored my water use. Mm-hmm. I couldn't believe that, this is 2008, right? And it's not that long. It was a while ago. I was shocked at that time that people didn't really know, right? They didn't know what they were pumping. They didn't really know how much water they were using. And
metering it,
not metering it. And then, of course, it became the discussion of we're going to meter your wells. And then everybody started to panic and then became, disconnected. But again, there's just the beginning. How many people live on land or farm on land? You don't have to live there to farm there. Don't actually really know what they're pumping or what they're using. Okay, I mean, things have changed, right? Yep. We have technologies that are easier now that we're calculating water differently. We're managing it, monitoring it differently. Satellite now, and I mean, everything's different now than what it was in 2008. But, I knew then that something was changing fast because they had already proposed to us. Governor Brown at the time declared a Brown Act in that drought and created those charts of who was going to get water and who wasn't. And I was like, but wait a minute. How is the government system going to control this? Yeah. If they're making these charts already, then how are we going to monitor it? So fast forward to 2025, here we are. And we have these years of knowledge and years of experience. How do we bring people to the forefront and somehow teach the last however many years to what has drawn to get us to here?
Sure.
And I cannot talk about your discussion. It's on Facebook, your page. It's on Facebook, but talk about what drove you to doing that first.
Absolutely. So so we're on the discussion group is on Facebook. It's I'm trying to remember the actual exact name of the
Pass
Facebook group.
Robles, groundwater basin
Stakeholders. Or discussion group, yes.
Discussion group.
We changed it from stakeholders, and it was at the request of a member on the basin, which hopefully this shows that I'm staunchly interested in making sure that I'm accurate. And but because that term stakeholders means something different in the legal sense.
Yeah. You own the rights of the property that is over the actual boundary line, within the boundary lines of the actual Paso groundwater basin.
Yeah. So really the mailing list is at pasowater.com. I registered that on, if that meeting was December 16th, I think it was December 17th, was, okay, we got to get something going where it's memorable, it's short, we can get as many people as possible to visit it, and just sign up. Again, one of my main goals is as many contacts of people that are on the basin as possible so that everyone is involved in the decisions that are coming.
So that December meeting, it was just literally December 2024. It was very quick. It was mailed out from the county, mailed out quickly, and it was like crazy because I think I received it in the mail at a not my own property, at a business that I'm invested in property. Within maybe a week to when I received the letter is when that meeting was.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just put this into perspective. I attended that meeting. I attend any meetings that I can via Zoom if there's not pornographic material that gets put on the front of it, right?
Gosh. Okay,
and we all get shut off. But I attended that meeting. I'm going to give you my interpretation of that meeting. I walked in and went, hot diggity dog. People paid attention. There was a lot of people in there.
A ton of people. In fact, there were more than capacity, so a lot of people were actually sent home, which was kind of frustrating.
Sent home or made them stand in the corner, which I was like, you guys were then I say you guys were referring to the county staff and all the different programs that could potentially, happen. And I was like, okay, so they were not expecting very many people.
Yeah.
And that's exactly, I'm glad you said that, because I was like, I was overwhelmed and I was excited. And then I sat in the audience, got told by the staffer to not cheer, celebrate, or make any acknowledgments. I was treated like a kindergarten with everybody else in that group. They did. It was just like I'm like we all know how to be polite, right? But we had that lesson that took forever for that, and then we got into the discussion of how they were going to form and how they were going to do what they're doing. I was crazy when everybody around me in that audience was asking questions about how are they forming when we don't even know what they're forming. I was like, where do you live? And they were telling me their address. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know how they're forming? This is on your property. You are in the basin. And I mean, I'm 10 to 15 people around me, different property owners that had no idea that this was even going on.
Well, we're in the county, we're in the county GSA, and there was zilch. We had no representation in this process or anything. That was a huge issue for me, learning that the county was going to be designating a board member and who's going to, essentially be one that doesn't have a single, constituent that resides on the Paso Basin is going to be the one that's representing us on behalf of the county. And that decision was being made by 5 supervisors, only one of which, who was not on the board, is actually representative of basin dwellers. It's like, wait a minute, hold up. That's like zero representation, from our stance. So, it was incredibly frustrating. The big takeaway for me was, I don't remember who I spoke to that night, but, when they had all the stations available to learn, various aspects of what they were planning, I asked the obvious questions, like, wait a minute, so if I understand everything correctly, I read through the documentation and, water usage and all these things. It's you as of that meeting in December, it was still on the table that they may be metering residential wells, and that residential well owners were likely to be included in the fees.
In another term, de minimis users.
De minimis users, exactly. At the time, that was still on the table. So I had a pretty heated discussion with the individual that was kind of presenting this information about, like, this is like asinine. Like, wait a minute, what? So that, for me, it was like, I have to say, like, my purview is the de minimis user, because that's us. Again, I don't understand. I'm not a farmer. I've never run that type of operation. My wife actually works in agricultural financing, so that's a nuance that we have to balance, right? Is because we're 100% pro, agriculture, but at the same time, like, I'm also about doing what's right and looking at, like, what's responsible, to do, and where there's abuses, and, like, tackling that. Like you were saying earlier, is just like solutions.
Yeah. You really want to have something that is going to be sustainable.
Yeah.
One word, but that's just really kind of that long term. And it's going to be there for generations.
Yeah.
If we think about it in people terms.
So let me go back. So here comes a little history lesson. I'm just going to put it out there. So fourth generation to Pastor Robles. Back in the day, my family, I have grandparents that were heavy construction operators, and then other family that were water well drillers, and this is many years ago, 70s, 80s. Okay, the sad part on all of this is a majority of the residential areas that are over the basin. I'm just going to talk about the basin. There's still, even in areas without being in the basin in our county, that are on wells. That development happened with the intent that we put the cart before the horse, right? So we created places like Jardine, Geneseo, Whitley Gardens, Ground Squirrel Hollow, all these areas that we allowed the development to happen without the infrastructure truly needed for that development. Kind of sounds like an ongoing dilemma. Like,
Yes,
I mean, how do we keep
truly.
developing things and we don't have resources to handle it? But it's kind of the same thing. It's like, these communities, it's kind of like Templeton. You and I are from Templeton. Templeton has its own community services district. They manage our water and they manage our sewers, and that's how we get our water and our taps turned on. Those areas back in the day were developed to become their own communities. They were developed to be, fast forward to today, again, there wasn't the organization of managing those developments, and now those areas have too many straws in the cup, and then we still allowed the amount of agriculture to be on ag zone land without any kind of management. And management on this, like, again, remember 2008, when we didn't have the vineyards. We had alfalfa then, we still had orchards, quite a bit of orchards at that time. It was changing. Vineyards were definitely coming in, but we still had a very large percentage of our grape growers being dry farmed. That was why everybody was coming here, because the Pizzenis and the Duceys, they led by example, and they taught us how to grow grapes without irrigation. And alfalfa was a huge, heavily irrigated crop, but it was also farmed over basin areas that had very deep water wells, that had a huge amounts of water. And that's where you drive out to Shandon, in certain areas, and you would see green grass in the middle of summer, but it was alfalfa fields. And so it's like it became this like free for all, like, we're going to get in and get out, get this going. But again, we've developed, and we haven't realized that, reverse, we need water to be able to live. We need water to be able to farm. But again, we still haven't done. And I'm not the person that's going to sit here and say, we should have metered everybody's wells, or we should have,
Well, we should have had culture and community that would take care of that.
Trust.
And that's 100%. Where paper water is a big issue. I mean, you go all the way back throughout the state and the West, and just really looking at, it's sort of out of sight, out of mind. People don't understand water because they're not looking at it. We're not holding that in above ground reservoirs or a lot of other types of water things.
We stopped pond development because of evaporation, and indoor people were like, why is that vineyard putting in a pond
Yeah.
If I can't even, you know what I mean? There was this question
Well, they
of
were
the
doing
pond,
their own
but that was,
recycling,
you know,
yeah.
you could see it, right? Like that's why my whole advocacy of, you know, supporting local farms. At least you could see where the food's being grown.
Yeah.
You know who's managing your food. I mean, we have to eat, right?
Yeah,
So
well, and
we
that's
might
what
as well
water
see
looks
it.
like. Water
Yes.
looks like alfalfa. Water looks like crops. Water looks like cows, grapes. So we have to just, like we're saying, find these solutions where if you get enough people together and people want to, you know, speak up and have that representation that's needed, really, really localized. That's something we talk about a lot here. Just like, how can we get down to these real regional and localized economies and scales? And I think that you're not going to find a way out of this without some kind of model. And so we were talking a little bit like, how could this look like almost certification or some kind of, you know, really good practices, best management practices?
Fast forward, I mean, there's
And
been
other ways
other
of money
meetings, there's been other
making.
discussions since that December meeting, and I do see that you attended
Oh, yes.
quite a,
Almost all of them.
I see your name on things, right? You know, and I'm like, he's been here with me. It's actually kind of nice to actually see a person outside of, you know, different types of entities that are making their employment go. You know, because I'm a private sector. I'm showing up, volunteering my time to keep myself educated, and at the same time sharing the information that was presented to us to the people that can attend, just like you are. And that's why I was, you know, our connection is, again, thanking you, but at the same time, you know, getting better together and connected, because this last Monday meeting, my takeaway this last Monday meeting was the follow-up meeting. So our community put forth the Prop 218 vote. So people go, what is this and where did it come from? Do you want to explain a little bit about it?
Absolutely.
Go for it.
Yeah, so the Prop 218 vote, a bit fascinating, actually. So if we rewind just a little bit, because you mentioned, you know, how big the turnout was at the town hall in December, everything since then has actually been relatively small.
Very.
And there's a reason for that, is because I'm not going to take credit for this. There were a lot of people that were you know, raising the hand like, hey, this is like completely unfair. But when they kind of steered the ship away from, and there was one individual on the board, I'm going to refrain from using names in most of the conversation, but who it looked altruistic, you know, basically was very vocal about, you know what, we shouldn't be involving the de minimis users in this, right? But then you learn, well, why do they not want to involve the de minimis users, right? It's because we are not supportive of what they're doing, so you can carve us out. So what ended up happening was the bulk of this year, meetings, town halls, all these things, de minimis users were excluded from. I never got them. I'm you know, I'm like one
different
of the mouthpieces.
perspective and point of view,
Yeah, I mean, I'm truly one of the mouthpieces on the basin for de minimis users, you know, the largest stakeholder group about the decisions that are being made on their behalf by number, not by acreage.
Not by usage,
Yeah, or not by usage, but by number, like the human lives, the toll, you know, about the decisions that are being made is more significant in the group that I'm representing, not formally, but that, you know, that I'm trying to educate. And yet we were completely excluded from the process once they figured out the strategy with the 218 vote of excluding us from it, right? So that 218 vote, so the Prop 218 process for those that are unaware, basically was like a second chance or a second attempt at preventing the government from screwing us over. So California voters, after Prop 13, I think it was, essentially, you know, attempted to preserve our property taxes and, you know, prevent just arbitrary passage of fees and taxes on property owners, because we're the easy target. We own physical property. Many of us have the means to pay for things, right? And it was so heavily abused that taxpayers voted for Prop 218, which amended the California state constitution to require a very rigorous process to allow new fees to be attached to our property.
Yeah, that was the no vote you guys just did when Jesse was here.
Yes. And so, but it's a no vote, righty? No. So it wasn't, if you voted no, that was, you did not protest it. You had to vote yes because you are protesting.
Yeah.
It's one of those kind of situations.
Yeah.
It's a Prop 218. And again, I think this is where a lot of people are confused because, you know, they were thinking that voting no against 218 was getting rid of the board and or fees, right? Like now that they voted no, but that's the opposite.
Yeah.
You needed to vote yes to protest
Yes,
the
I
fees.
protest this fee.
But the way that the board was formed, you're not voting to get rid of that board. That board is still
They
present.
need a new mechanism of funding.
So
They legally have to have a new mechanism.
They legally have to, exactly. But okay, so now back onto this last Monday meeting was a quick. Oh, we're having a Monday meeting, which was at 1 o'clock, and then
1 o'clock on a Monday.
On a Monday,
everyone's notified Friday.
God, it didn't have fraud and craziness going on Zoom because I was at work with USDA and I couldn't leave, and I thank God I could watch Zoom. I tried to ask questions, but for some reason their question section in Zoom was not working. Funny as that is gone on. I was texting people in there to go up to the podium again and say your name is this, not and then we couldn't get it together. But there was random threw this meeting together, but it was the recap how this board was going to move forward. And mind you, there's other GSAs now within the groundwater basin. We're specifically talking about the Paso Groundwater Basin Management Authority. Okay, so this is, this
That's
is the
the
part.
Praga group,
Yep. And so they had this meeting in order to see now that Prop 218 was protested, right? We protested the fee. Now, how are they going to move on?
Yeah.
They admitted, you got to remember all these boards, and I got to remember everybody that is in this community. When they're a public entity, they have to be transparent. They have to give you facts. You will ask the most stupidest question that anybody could ever ask. Guess what? They still have to give you the time, whether they're employment, they're board members, whatever. They have to give you the time and answer your question. Yes, at a meeting. Yes, in public comments, so maybe be a little more organized in your public comments. But they still have to. And the condescending attitudes of our public public entities, I would really like to change. But long story short, they still have to answer your questions. And this is where you go to get these questions answered. And the question that was brought to them is how much that board is in debt.
Yeah.
How much they've spent money they did not have. And now they're trying to figure out how to bring it
Reconcile.
back, bring another vote back, because they do have the option of Prop 26, which is a different way of collecting fees.
Yeah, they missed the property tax.
Just to form them, just to get the money back that they've already spent, that was never authorized legally to be able to be spent.
Yeah. There are a lot of things intersecting right now that are making it very unfortunate for everyone involved. So one, the great market is in the tank. Right, everyone's struggling there. We all see it. That was really the catalyst behind. And this was actually one of my bigger frustrations. Where, okay, so you guys are going to spend all this money. Okay, you're going to do it without representation. At least it looks like you're going to do something. And then by the time they get to the 218 vote, after one meeting, and from what I can tell, one letter that was sent to the board from a group of vineyard operators that essentially stated that we don't have the money to pay for all this. It was all stripped out of the budget. So what you did have, which promised all these things that would actually move the needle on water, I wasn't necessarily a fan of them, but at least they were they were decade-long studies on programs that were going to deliver water into the basin and make more water available, right? Theoretically, it was all stripped out in one meeting from one request, and that request was coming from someone who holds a ton of power, on behalf of a lot of investors that are not living in the basin, not even living in California, many of them, right? And all of that was stripped out to where this thing was so lean. We're basically going to spend money just to spend money and wait this out. And it's like, okay, now we have a new problem, right? So you have that. Then you have the county being completely broke right now. I mean, that's public news. I don't need to go into details on that, but I mean, there have been significant layoffs. The budget has had to be completely retooled. We're leaning out programs. I do have to say I've liked the transparency that they have in this process. The county, I think they've done a good job of communicating a lot of this stuff. But that's at play, right? Because the county does carry a lot of the financial burden of all the stuff that has been happening, and they're going to be the ones that have to pay for the things moving forward if none of the stuff goes through.
Yeah, the buck stops there in this county.
The buck stops there, exactly. So that is now a motivating factor behind this, figuring out how we're going to get the money, right?
But the sad thing is remember when Sigma was passed, how much money did our county received from the state of California, and we all knew that it was a toy, right?
Yeah.
Here's some money, children, you know, spend it wisely, but we're not going to teach you anything. We're not going to give you anything. You guys just need to spend it wisely, right? And they got the money to go out and do the studies. And, you know, what happened to rainwater capture? What happened to soil retention, moisture retention? What happened to, you know,
Better practices,
really
yeah.
studying,
Voluntary
you know,
fouling,
about
all that,
dams.
yeah.
Do they work? Or, you know,
Yeah.
what happened to, you know, ponds? You know, can we monitor ponds and not wells?
Yeah.
And, you know, we were supposed to do all this stuff with the money. And now, fast forward all these years later, that money's done, gone. Then they overspent it. And then they come to RAC and they want us to pass another budget. And all we ask them is, okay, you want us to pass this budget, but what did you stay within your budgets for the last year, last 5 years, last 10 years?
Yeah.
No. So how do we pass a new budget
Yeah.
when you can't even stay within your budget
Yeah.
that it was given to? I mean, and they had millions. And now we have the situation where if we don't comply, who's to say the state's not going to come and ask for their money back?
Yeah, yeah. So one of the more frustrating things to me is, so we go to church out in Creston. So there's, I'm going to keep names and specific locations out of this because I don't want to make too many enemies in this process. But there's a property that we pass by every time we go out to church. That going to church, coming from church, midweek if we go to a church activity, for the entire stretch of that property has the mist sprinklers in the
Overhead
air.
sprinkler.
Yep, and the reason for that, for everyone's edification,
Feed,
is you have to use the water, right? So we have flawed water code, you know, issue that is a problem that I'm sure it's really hard to fix, but needs to be fixed. Like the fact that you can drive by a property and see a 8-inch pipe flowing. Because you have to run the numbers, to keep the rights, to keep your water rights, right? All the while, you're now toying with, charging, John Q. homeowner that puts almost 100% of what I use back in the ground, and it's very little bit, right? To fix some problem, like it's a scapegoat entirely, right? But I don't know why that's not the topic, and I would love for our leaders that are. First of all, not full-time employed elsewhere, but that are working on these problems to be pursuing actual solutions, like we talked about earlier. Just like, what's the actual solution here?
Well, the solution is so far out there. When we can have that meeting on Monday, and the argument became the fact of everybody that could attend that meeting was asking, you don't have any money. Why do you think you're going to continue to move forward?
Yeah.
And the board kept directing it back to passing a budget.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times did we hear in that meeting on Monday? And I was like, I actually looking at the big picture, I actually got sick to my stomach watching that, because it was like, you have a board of representation that was totally just like, yes, I know I'm out of money, but I don't care. We're going to find it somewhere and you're going to pay. Like, it became that. Like,
Yep.
I was like, yes, I know we spent over this amount of money, but I don't care. You guys got to still give us a budget.
Yep.
We mismanaged your money, but you still got to give us a budget. Like,
They're not solving it.
No, it was so incredibly confrontational.
Yeah.
And it was so. I mean, Cannon, I can't even imagine having to hear the same people over and over again asking the same questions. Like, I feel for anybody that steps up and is a volunteer on a board. Those guys are not volunteer; they're paid.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the sad thing is like, you're still there. You're still that you have to do your part in being respectful and not confrontational and understand, like, yes, every time somebody asked you that came up and was in public comment and asked those questions about finances, and you could answer clearly, there is no money.
Yeah.
How do you move forward when there's no money?
Yeah.
Magic money does not grow on trees, because if it did, as a nursery grower, I'd be growing it and I would not share it. Okay.
But I think my favorite part was like the discussion devolved into the reality very openly, which I thought was fascinating to watch and listen to. Right? It was very transparent. We can't do anything because we don't have the money, but we still need to collect the money to keep the band together and to do the reporting, right? And then one of the board members steered it towards, well, how can we collect enough money now while we have the legal obligation of the GSAs to pay for whatever we decide. It was very transparent.
And he
It's
said it
we
clear as
totally
day.
control, but they don't have to approve it, right? There was a whole conversation with the attorney. Well, no, per the agreements of the GSAs, the 4 GSAs, they have to pay what Praga determines, through a process is due or owed, right? So the conversation literally steered towards, okay, well, how can we raise enough money to get us through next year now, while we have to force them to pay? It was that blunt.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're looking at people taking full accountability. And if you're saying that you're getting to these places where, these decisions just sort of creep and get swept too, in the bigger picture of everything else happening, it becomes almost irreconcilable. I mean, look at how much debt the U.S. government is in as a whole. Mm-hmm. So how do we, really kind of get back to like those tactics of the water is the most important thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, money is money. And if we have to squeeze, mega corporations or whatever's happening within the spaces or something, changes in that regard, if there's no water, there's no reason to, pay anything. Yep. And so that's the biggest thing. I think people have to really look at what the uses can be or how to change some of that.
We should have the studies done to truly know if there is water under. I mean, and the sad thing is when do we go and just stop for a second and go back and go, okay, instead of thinking I have to have something, let's get creative with what I already have. Remember,
that's what we're talking about.
Having this conversation. Why are we farming with irrigation?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You need to focus on the water. You don't need to focus on
more. Like we just got
costs
to
or
just
studies.
Go
studies
back
aren't going to get you anywhere.
It's terrifying right now. What is really happening? Mm-hmm. Like there's no studies out there been done with the money that was already spent if we have water or if we don't have water. Yeah. Nobody really truly knows where the water is. And guess what?
The whole planet doesn't know where it's going without temperatures or air. I mean, water is going to be one of the biggest wars that's waged.
How about one earthquake?
The West is very scary that way.
One earthquake. Does anybody not remember the San Simeon earthquake? Are we all not from here long enough to know that the San Simeon earthquake literally destroyed
Paso got pretty beat up. They put a big hole in the ground.
But why did they put a big hole in the ground? Because of the amount of sulfur water that's underground, right? Yeah. Just because we don't want to pump that anymore because it stinks. But at the same time, the fact that in the western side of our county, I'm just going to tell you where we live, York Mountain on the eastern side before the San Simeon earthquake had quite a bit of water. Those wells actually produced a good amount of water, right? We're known as a watershed area, right? But so there's certain areas.
A lot of ancient little trapped
very
water.
Ancient waters.
Yeah, they don't replenish.
What? After the San Simeon earthquake, it was like somebody turned off the tap.
Yeah.
It was gone. That water was all gone. It moved. And it's in it's in other parts of our county. Artesian wells, opened up in that earthquake. And so I mean, we're sitting
here. It's a dynamic process. It's a natural process. We have to evolve with it, and we have to evolve quicker. I think that's what we're saying. These decisions have to get made quicker, and they have to be done with some kind of context to the actual usage. And so, putting measures in at every scale, whether you're using it at the residential scale or some of these mega users. There has to be something, like you said, where we can change some of the regulation or water usage numbers, but also the practices have to get changed right away. People can't get the same water, acre foot if they're not willing to move some of these forward. I think the same thing happens in bigger basins like the Valley and other ways. They're just like crying every time they lose water. And it's like, well, you can't just keep flood irrigating. Yeah. You can't just flow the water on the ground and say that's a good job. That's not going to get the food grown. Mm. The thing is, you want to grow the food, you have to change your practices and how you're growing it. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be done within these total same contexts. There's so many new technologies. So we always talk about starting with education. And I think that's the great point where we're at, where we got to talk about what your group does. Next, when it comes to technology and how the ways we're going to do that. Mm-hmm. And that leads into the renovation of ways that we can use the water basin, longer.
So talk to us about your group. So what's your goal? Do you just want to put the information out? Do you want to form more people in the sense of bringing in more knowledge into it?
It's kind of twofold. One is absolutely to educate people and to get them to understand how significant the issue is to them,
to be able to vote
to
when
their household, right? This isn't something that's just like a macro problem that you can kind of let slide, or that other far greater minds than yours are working on. That was a big aha moment that's like, oh, not really. I mean, you have like some pretty high paid consultants that are incentivized to keep consulting and to keep a problem existing, right? Not necessarily to fully solve it. And then you have the chair of the Praga board, right, represents huge, like, more than $1 billion in investments in local ag. That's running the show, and it is on full display at these meetings. I don't think I'm like crossing any line here and saying that this
happens all the way up and down the board in the government.
It does. It truly does.
But see, people don't realize also too. I'm just going to put these two words out there: water futures. So people don't realize that the state of California and California system is trading water stocks right now on the NASDAQ. So all this, what you shared out there that you see these big old pipes of water in the middle of summer of just gushing irrigation out. Why? They got to show usage. Why? So that they can offset that water and they can move that water, and that's where that investment comes in. Right now the stocks are all about buy-in. But and we're seeing it literally in real time right now. Why things are going on the way they are, because it's all about the NASDAQ. It's all about Wall Street. And just like how you said, how do we have a board member that represents $1 billion in water interest speaking on stakeholders, residential stakeholders on the basin?
There's not
a conflict of interest in that?
There's not a single member of the board who has, and that's what, like we were talking about before we started, I'm in the county GSA. One would think that, it's a county board, a supervisor from the county, right? That occupies a seat on the board, that you would go with District 5, right? Bulk of the basin. No, that's not the direction that we went. Why? It raises the question of why, always. Shouldn't we have that accountability? So it's not there with that seat. It's not there with the chair of the board. That's a very, very small number of property owners that have all the voice in this process and all the financial interest in it. Then you have, the mayor of Paso, the largest water appropriator. They don't have the direct, first rights to what's underneath us. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing that we have that set up. I'm just saying, like, where's the
representation of the voice
for the majority of homeowners that are the ones that are, and you were talking earlier about like the the water crisis we need to fix because we'll run out of water. Well, we will. The homeowners are. I mean, it's not a huge number. I think it's 300 and something properties over the last 10 plus years. But those are 300 people that had to pay tens of thousands of dollars to fix a problem. So we actually are incurring those costs without being able to monetize it, while other members of the board represent folks that can go as deep as they want.
Yeah, you have the shortest straw
as long as they want. Absolutely. So, but they're the ones that are making the decision on sustainability.
Yeah, and then you can think about like humanity and where do these things come in, or what should be done in that basin. Is it a better place for for cows, crops, or for people? Like what are the uses and overall? So yeah, there's a lot there that
there's a lot.
Like we said, I think we're just all being called to action in this day and time, and as things have changed up and down the scale of government and industry and business and even just relations. And so I think that people really have to understand their sense of place and really speak toward their place. It's great if people have general knowledge or things go at a federal or a national scale, but I don't think anything really beats, like you're saying, having somebody who lives in the basin, manages the basin on a daily basis, professionally, it to be not part of the conversations of how do we regulate this basin. And I think that's where the biggest problem with government is like how that regulation gets administered. So, and how do we get our hands back into that, or our voices to the government system that has been, long time corrupted by two parties, giving, friends and industries, creating iron triangles. I could go on what I learned
definitely at a disconnect because
college.
Like we talk about this because it is always the same people, and the people that there's like the 3CE bills. 3CE is a community electrical thing that our county board of supervisors voted for, and then all of a sudden, abracadabra, it just appears on our PG&E bill. And that's the other one. If you know any discussion groups that are about that right now, because people are starting to realize that they have all of these fees that they're paying, and guess who they call? Melanie, what's this?
Yeah.
You know, I get that, and it's like to have to explain it to go back, right? But we are truly at a disconnect. There are people that are running these boards or running these systems. They're getting paid a lot of money to do these jobs, but the people that they're supposed to be informing and representing, there's that disconnect communication. Like they're doing their jobs in a sense, pushing paper, but they're not communicating properly to, the people that they're representing. And it's crazy to me because I sit on another volunteer board and they're like, well, how are we going to notify these people? People don't want to read their emails anymore. People don't necessarily answer the phone. I'm like, why are we afraid to knock on each other's doors?
Yeah.
Why are we afraid to have this conversation?
Face to face.
Face to face. Let's go have a conversation. Knock on that person's door. I had to go and hand out papers to all the residents of the Templeton 4th of July parade, right? Everybody was like, no, just go put it on the door. Go put it. No, I'm going to knock on the door.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say, just by the way, on this day, this time, between this time, the streets are going to be blocked. Please just communicate with us if there's an issue or a problem that needs to be addressed.
Yep.
But please come join with us because we need to be a community. And this is, we've only been doing this parade for I don't even know how many years, but at the same time, it was like, do you know how much information I got in a 4-block radius that I just walked? I walked with my 90-year-old grandmother and my son, and it was so funny because my son said, Mom, just put a bag over your head. Don't let anybody know because they want to tell you everything. And I'm like, but at the same time, I don't have enough time, but I need to make more time because again, it's the community. I have no problem showing up. I have no problems communicating. I will finagle my life and my day to stay informed, but not everybody has that desire to do that.
Yeah.
And there's people like you that I just can't thank enough for the information that you've gotten out there, the invitation. And doing this and look at your knowledge, and you just started not very long.
Not
So
even
you've
here.
given me hope because I've been feeling like I've been doing this forever, and I'm like, how do I explain this? You just started, and you have a good amount of the information, the knowledge of what it's taken to get us to here.
Yeah. Well, we live in a society where there's a lot of distractions, and I don't think that's unintentional, right?
No.
We have, on this device,
All of us.
we have exactly.
Mine's out of reach.
Good job. Good job.
Yeah, a constant flow of distractions that keep us from learning about things that matter and caring about things that matter, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, that's where we say here. We say, how are we going to be accountable to each other? Because that's what something Melanie and I really base our relationship on. Is we'll come up and we connect. Whenever I come to North County, I'd always run through and try and see her and see, hey, what's going on for you? What's new here? How do we kind of find that common denominator? And I think that's all we're really asking for in these positions that are appointed or really formed is like, how do we get them to communicate a real need or fact so that it's not just sort of like corrupt to the highest bidders. And we're just asking people at a foundational level. That's why we believe in like organic agriculture. We believe in, eating, native foods and things that are from this place, in the ocean. And so we still talk about that's our region. So how do we represent our region? And with pride. I mean, that's what's really great. Like getting together for parades or getting together for dinners. We're doing another dinner this week, a Cubano dinner down in Los Osos. We're trying to get community gatherings happening. So, we're trying to make that space and around earth, around dirt, around what we do with the dirt, what we do with our water. And so I think those are big moments
what we could accomplish
reformulate
in attracting people if we did more of our political meetings like potlucks. Although, I mean, there's
we're going to do a fair coming up.
I know.
We'll see the whole town.
The fair, the grain revival. We're doing the fundraiser for Templeton Feed and Grain. I've invited other farmers and producers and groups to come onto Nature's Touches property so we can have that community connection. Like we're all so busy and disconnected and uninformed because of it, right?
Do it with a cold drink in your hand and hanging out.
Even better.
Your neighbors. I mean, we need one day.
Yes.
Maybe a day a month. So, something like that. We really push.
But even if we had our political meetings like a potluck, you know what I mean? And like, we don't necessarily have to bring food, but it's just, you know what I mean? Like we
Yeah.
have to change
Breaking
in the
bread and
direction
sharing.
of you and I and a few of us that are the only ones that show up to these meetings and putting it out. Like my want for you and inviting you to come onto the podcast. So passowater.com is his website. So yes, he's got a discussion group on social media, but passowater.com is how you get a hold of John. But my invitation was to be able to really invite people to join with you. If it's not with me, it's with you. Or if, you know, there's not very many of us that I'm the same way. Like I'm very politically active, but I don't want people to know where I vote. I want to live by an example. I want to be transparent, and I feel like you've really done that as well.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, I want to educate. Okay, it doesn't matter who they are, what they are. This is what they've done.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
And yeah, just be honest, and like
Just be honest.
my whole goal is not to like randomly disappear someday because I crossed that line, right? Because we were dealing with some pretty important people and some pretty big businesses on this whole topic.
Yeah.
But it's just to be honest, and I will correct myself. I have done so. If you look back, I mean, there are times where I went down a road that was like I hadn't considered that. I mean, there are people from like Farm Bureau and all kinds of associations that have helped me get to where I am today. And I have to say, one of the unique things is like after meeting Graywall, right? The guy's a champ. He's a superhero. Not all superheroes wear capes. They do wear cowboy hats.
Yes,
But,
he wears a big one.
Yes.
And he's referring to Greg Grewal. Greg Grewal is a good friend to all of us. He's sat on many political boards as a volunteer, as a retired fire from Southern California, and he came into this community. All he's done is give back. Yes, I think that because he's been since the beginning to current, the knowledge that man has is unreal.
Yeah.
And
Great legacy. Yeah.
but there's not. He'll tell you flat out, like, this is what this person said, and how it does, and and he'll back it up with a piece of paper from that meeting's agenda and their minutes. So it's like he's a rarity, right? He's like incredible, and so you and I both, like, you've learned from him, which is super awesome. But at the same time, I've gotten to sit in the same meetings with him for years, and I have to tell you, it's kind of fun.
Well, I was going to say, it's like the process
Followed him out.
from December until today of, because I everyone I talk to, everything I learn, I always take with, this is a source of a bit of information. How do I cross-check this and learn more about the topic that's referenced here that I don't fully understand, and all these things, right, to try and piece my own, opinions together. And with Graywall, it's been kind of fascinating because I will say, like, right out of the gate, he's intense, right? Very intense. And there's some stuff that, I try and give people the benefit of the doubt and, kind of take the more conservative approach on things. But over time, from December until today, it's like, yep, check that one off the list. He was right about that. Yep, that one, 100%. Like, that's totally what's happening. This one, I mean,
someone's got to uphold the truth in our and it's usually really great when we have like the elders doing that or people with a big breadth of knowledge. But I think just neighbors getting together, and that's the whole point.
Yeah,
nature's neighbor.
And
all of ours.
I'm also going to commend you for that too, because you came in differently. You came in on your own, and I say come in. Just putting yourself out there, the vulnerability of putting yourself out there, an invitation to learn with you, right? And everybody was like, Greg was that person, Graywall was that person that you hear all the time, and he's speaking all the time. And it was so grateful because I was like, Greg, most of our community members have no idea that this even happened or is getting ready to happen. And, and he was like, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I'm like, and I'm doing this and doing this, trying to teach people, not change their way of voting. I just wanted them to know what Sigma was. Like, I can't believe how many times I've had to teach what Sigma is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you came in with, this whole path of going, I'm going to do exactly. And then it's funny because Greg doesn't want to be right. He doesn't need to prove that he's right. He's just sharing what the experiences of where he's been and what has come to what it is today.
Yeah.
And I kind of giggle because there was a beginning when they're like, oh, is he different than Greg? I'm like, he's putting information out that's pretty accurate, so I don't, I'm like, I'm not saying that Greg's always right, but I haven't, in all these years when he speaks up, I was sitting right there with him in that same meeting.
Yeah.
You know, so I can't argue it, you
Yeah.
know? So it's
The one place where I may be proven wrong, that when maybe I do differ with him a little bit, and again, this might just be for my own lack of experience and education on the topic, is I really don't think that everyone's working together on some grand conspiracy yet. I think it's a lot of mildly informed people making decisions to get it off their
Me
table.
first.
Yeah, like it's not something where everyone's like deeply knowledge about
so I'm gonna rephrase that too
Yeah.
for you, help you too. There's a difference between circles of conspiracy, but there's also a lot of people following along, thinking
Totally.
that the person in the beginning is right,
Absolutely.
and not questioning that person, and they just get involved with that circle of potential conspiracy, and they create the
They're
illusion.
enablers,
Yeah, they're
yeah.
enabling. So
Yeah.
they're enabling the bad
intent,
situations.
sure.
So, and at the end of the day, let's just put it out there. Let's talk about how much staff and board of supervisors and their attorneys do financially gain from all of this.
Absolutely, yeah.
But then also at the same time, every employee right now in this discussion that we're talking about, how many consultants are they working with for the same position that they are being employed to?
Mm-hmm.
So taxpayers are not only paying for that employee,
Mm-hmm.
the supervisor, the employee, but they're also paying for all these consultants
Yeah.
to tell the employee
Yeah.
how to do the job that they're supposed
Yeah.
to already know how
And
to
this
do.
is all for profit.
And it's
these
all
aren't like
for
non-profit.
profit.
I mean, and that's not necessarily in itself a bad thing, but people need to understand that turns groundwater into a commodity, right?
Yeah.
Like and that's not. I don't approve of that.
Yes.
I don't. Everyone else can make their own minds up. But I mean, for me, like I bought the property where we bought it because we wanted that autonomy and our little fiefdom, and we understood the rules as they were of the day, and so we're gonna try and preserve that.
Yeah. Well, we want to use our land for things that we need to produce.
Absolutely.
Food needs
Yeah.
to grow.
I want to
and that too,
leave
so,
it better than I started.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
That's honestly
goal.
what my goal is, and that's I'm everything.
Yeah.
I'm again, if we could just get creative with what we have instead of constantly always thinking we need new or
Yeah.
bigger. Let's just fix what we have.
It's really just sharing, like I said, sharing the information, it's sharing the knowledge of how to do things in better practices. That's the first step. And if we're not willing to do that, then we have bigger problems as a community.
Yep.
And that's really what we're talking about. So
Yeah.
hopefully a lot of gatherings, a lot of things coming up that really will help people to maybe find that,
And I will say,
connection.
going back to the Prop 218 stuff, something that's very important that came out of the Monday meeting a week ago from today. There will be another 218 vote.
Yes.
That is a fact.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
Yeah, so
I knew that was a temporary fix. I heard.
No, they're going to bring it back.
they're going to bring it back. Well,
They're gonna bring it back.
They have to. There
a
is
better
no-
campaign for that 218.
Yeah, because there's no money.
And I can tell you, they're going to
need
work for
money.
it. They're going to work for it. Like that's my personal goal, and a number of others. And I credit Murray Powell and Greg and all the others that have that really did the grassroots effort to essentially guarantee that outcome. From
protest it.
Yeah, from my part, I will be educating as many people as possible. And again, that's why I want to build that mailing list on passwater.com, is so that people can follow and be aware of when that's happening, because it will be another attempt. We already told them no, they're going to ask again.
And there's
that simple.
there's also Prop 26.
Yeah,
too.
Prop 26 is interesting. Yeah, that was one of the more fascinating things. Is like there's full acknowledgement that Prop 26 gives them no money to actually do anything of substance, right, or of sustainability, just to operate the entity.
Yeah.
And to do the reporting. They can do it through that, but there's even limitations on who they can charge and how.
I mean, to me, it's
another
like,
funding source.
It's
Yeah.
another funding source, but it's it's there, right? Like
Yeah.
it's gonna be. It would be countywide too. It's not just within their region, right? I think it's a countywide fee. Is what I read. I
Okay.
I
Interesting,
gotta
yeah.
look into that because I don't. It's kind of funny. Prop 26 is not just, but yes, that would give them money to actually
Exist. Yeah.
but they don't want that.
Yeah.
They want more. And
Actually, I think they would be truly. I think they would actually be okay with that. Understanding the all of the things that are happening around this, timing wise, with the market being where it is and all these things, right? I think they're perfectly okay with getting baseline funding because it allows the entity to exist, so that in the future they can charge us, and in the future they can meter us, and in the future they can do X, Y, and Z.
Or just it benefits everyone to have that
Yeah.
entity because it's again more local localized control
Yeah.
of a basin from the boards.
Yeah.
You know, zoomed in.
It's the only legal way that they can charge is to have a joint powers agreement. There is no legal pathway to where they can collect money to do the infrastructure projects without Praga existing. And Praga cannot exist unless it has a budget. That's the law. So they have to have a budget. And that's, again, one of my goals is don't give them $1 because it's not going to end well. And just getting them through next year, we already know from that last meeting that the new goal is, well, let's collect as much money as we can to buy us time through next year because these suckers are legally obligated. They signed that piece of paper where I remember, and I will drop a name here, and I respect the guy. I mean, I have a history with him, but Mayor Hammond. I remember the meeting very clearly where they opted to join this, and him stating very clearly, we are not giving our water rights away.
Yeah.
Right? But, last Monday, we have to pay for everything that Praga wants to do.
Yep, I heard it too.
Yeah.
I heard that. I was at that meeting, the Paso City Council meeting when he said that. Yep.
So either
to be continued.
Oh, it's a lot. But before we
gotta
go
keep
quickly,
forward on it,
you have an event coming up. Promote your event.
Yeah, I think that we have a great calendar of things that we always want to get into. And, one of mine that we're looking at is trying to do a lot more wild caught and homegrown food things through some of our different outlets. So we've been doing a lot of pop-ups with different local chefs and using some space in Los Osos at Celia's Garden Cafe. So we have a space for gardens. We have a space to do, classes and other outreach on, food growing and things, but also some outlets and ways to, like we said, get together and have fun and eat the rewards of that. So what we want to turn our water into is some of these things. So we're looking forward to a series of those. The next one's going to be Wednesday night. So that's going to be another Cubano night, salsa dancing. We're going to have, a lot of local, pork and food menu that's going to be fun, drinks. And then we're going to start doing a series more. And we have a lot of other North County things coming up. I know we're going to be sharing information. So really glad to, hear more from you, John, and how we can maybe, share what you guys are doing and have space for that.
Instead of all this nonsense being so mind consuming and negative. I mean, it is negative. It's scary, right? But what is
Start
fear?
talking it out.
Fear is things you don't know, right?
Yeah.
And then once I know a little bit, and I think I'm more afraid. But but at the same time, is maybe if we gather together, be responsible, be caring, be good citizens, neighbors, right?
And know each other.
And have fun and learn
We might
from
get
each
out
other.
of this alive.
We might,
longer.
we might actually enjoy our ways to fixing and becoming the part of the
these things
solution.
don't have to be negative chores. We really should want to deal with our water resources in the best way possible. Should want to have our neighbors, healthy and happy and all those things. So definitely we'll get the word out and we'll talk more soon.
Awesome. Well, guys, we are at this end, and I want to thank everyone for attending. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back. Well, what are we doing next week, boys? It's Labor Day. I need to celebrate the labors. Are we having a show next week, or are we not having?
I'll be here if you want me to.
I don't know if I'll be here. Well, stay
a few
tuned.
holidays we definitely have taken care of ourselves, and we hope you will too. So stay
we need
tuned
to
for
celebrate
that.
our labor, and honestly, if anybody wants to become labor, we're all hiring. So maybe you want to come to work on that day. So reach out. All right, guys, have a very good week. Take care.
Cheers.